Oh, wait, hang on. No, I think it's the wrong one. The first question is, your resume needs to be 1 page. So is it true or false? Give you all half a minute to do it. Okay, getting some answers. So a mix of answers. True, true, false, false, true. Okay, maybe another 10 seconds before I share the answer. Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing. So actually the answer is true. For students especially, your resume needs to be just 1 page. This is just because, just to share a little bit, actually recruiters will basically only take 6 seconds to look at your resume. So you want your resume to be very succinct and you want it to just pop out at the recruiter. So really make it very succinct and impactful. Okay, and we'll go more into that a bit later. All right, next question. Do you need a photo on your resume, or a professionally taken photo on your resume? I'll give everyone another like 15 seconds to reply, true or false. No, true, false. Also a mix of answers I see. Okay, awesome. So the answer is actually false. You don't need to have a photo on your resume. So reason being, right, there's this thing called unconscious bias. So basically our brain just does a lot of associations, right? So you want the recruiter who's looking at your resume to, look at your skill sets and things like that. But sometimes if you put a photo there, just what if that recruiter doesn't like your face, I mean, it's really mean to say that, right? But that is unconscious bias. So you really don't want to risk that. You want the recruiter to kind of zoom in and look straight at your skills and hire you for, your skills, right? So that's the reason why you don't actually need to put your photo on your resume. Okay, next question. You need to list down all the projects that you have worked on. Another 15 seconds for everyone to answer. Okay, again, mix of answers, right? So actually, the answer is false. You don't need to list down all the projects you have done. You just need to list down the ones that are actually relevant to the job that you're applying for. Okay, awesome. And 2 more questions left. Next one, it's okay to have small grammatical errors in your resume. Should be quite straightforward, this one. I'll give everyone 10 seconds. All right, true, false. Okay, so this is really, really straightforward. No, it's not okay to have small grammatical errors, right? I know it seems like a very small thing, but it really shows how much effort you put into your resume. And recruiters can pick this up very easily and say, oh, why is there so many grammatical errors and things like that? And it just doesn't show a good first impression. So no, make sure you check and check and check and make sure your resume is, error-free. So a good tip for that is to get your friend to read through it, or get someone else to read through it. It always helps to have a second pair of eyes on it, right? And last question, you must provide a cover letter for every single job you apply for. Give everyone a few seconds. All right. So the answer to that is actually false. You don't have to provide a cover letter for every single job that you apply for. More often than not, it's the resume that catches the recruiter's attention, because they can actually see what you have achieved and your experiences and things like that. I think writing a cover letter will only make sense if you have a gap in your resume. You'd like to explain why you have an experience gap, but unless also the employer of choice asks you like to provide a cover letter, then yes, please write a cover letter. Other than that, I'd say don't waste your time on that. Recruiters will mostly look at your resume. Okay, and with that, okay, we're done with the quiz time. Thank you, Shad, for helping me, with the questions. And let us move on. Okay, so just going through the resume structure very quickly, let's talk about the primary components of your resume. So at Google, we see a huge variety of different resumes structures, and we understand also obviously there's a lot of advice on the internet, right, on how to write a good resume. Me included on YouTube, and every resume is very different, and it's based on your industry, your experiences, and your time in education. But really utilize whatever format feels the most comfortable for you, depending on what you would like to highlight. But this structure here is what I think helps most recruiters find the most relevant information to determine your eligibility for technical internships and full-time opportunities at Google. Right. So next, your education should come first in your resume. And why is this, right? It's because, well, you're students. So being a student is a very important part of your story, especially when you're submitting this resume for an internship or university grad role. So for post-secondary schools, right, it's just a good inkling to let us know where you're currently pursuing your education. Like if you moved on to graduate school or you've transferred, just make sure to kind of include that as well. Next thing is your intended major or degree. So I know it's quite self-explanatory, but we know that some universities don't require you to pick a major until the end of your second year. So just feel free to note your intended major, and if you haven't decided on it yet. The next bit is graduation month and year. So this is really, really important. Your graduation month and year really helps us determine if you're eligible for certain roles, right? So for example, if you are graduating in May or June of 2019, and you don't intend to return to school next fall, you are eligible for our full-time university graduate opportunities. But if you're graduating in like December, you may be eligible for our summer internship program. So it really, really depends. So please, when you write your resume, make sure you state your month and graduation month and year. And next, whether it's your cumulative or your major GPA, just make sure it's there on the GC on your resume. We'll be looking at the coursework on your transcript to see how well you did in the courses that are most relevant to your technical career. Yeah. And just a little bit on relevant coursework. So if you have completed a data structures and algorithms course, we do advise you to note this in your resume. And usually I think we ask you to submit a transcript as well. But again, recruiters look mostly at the resume, right? So if you have also specialized in a certain area and want to show advanced knowledge in certain area like embedded systems, machine learning, AI, also make sure that you put it in there so we know what you're interested in and what you're specializing in. And lastly, on your technical skills, I advise you to list this in order of proficiency. So the strongest first, the weakest. And it is a nice to have, but I think that your proficiency in your technical skills, it can be demonstrated in the body of your resume through your technical experience. But again, more on that a bit later. Right. So here is just an example of what I have talked about. Okay. So yeah, you put your university name, then your intended graduation date with the month and year, what major you did and your GPA, and then of course all the relevant courses that I mentioned previously, as well as your technical skills. And you notice here, they actually put like the number of years that they have on the technical skills. So it really gives the recruiter like an idea of how proficient you are, and how long you have spent learning that code, or how long you have spent coding, right? All right, next. So talking a bit about work experiences, at Google, we're very excited to see what you can bring to the team and the impact you will have on projects that affects all our users, right? So we want to know how, when, and where you've started to make this impact. So this section of the resume is a great way to show what your impact. So include your employer, position, dates employed. So for example, if you've done like an internship, make sure all those are listed. I would say in reverse chronological order would be good. And then the next bit is, making sure you keep your bullet points very clear, concise, and descriptive. I highly recommend bullet points and concise fragments over full sentences. It's fine if you want to do full sentences as well, but again, make sure it's very, very concise, right? And consider relevant experiences. Remember just now we had a question on the quiz asking if you should put out all your projects. No, don't do that. One page will not be enough for that. So especially, if you really want to highlight what you have done, and for every job that you're applying for may be a bit different, right? In what, so make sure you look at the job description as well. Make sure you can match your relevant projects and experiences to the job description. And then it should be good. So you really have to make sure you tailor your resume to the job you're applying for, right? And then I think one question I usually get as well is, I'm very early on in my tech career. What if I don't have the work experience? So to replace the work experience, you can just say like experiences, right? But internships, student groups, or any competitions you may have gone through, like ACM, or even any like Google competitions, things like that can be put in there as well. So just make sure you do put some of those things down that you have participated in. Okay. Right. So again, I'm going to providing you all with like an example of before and after, how you show your impact. Okay. So this is just, I guess, an example of what you could write down, and you can say, yes, this is the company, this is where I've worked at, I was an intern there, and yeah, basically this is what I did, right? And very honestly, to me, this looks like what I would see in a job description. So I can't particularly see what impact you have done, right? So if we look at the next slide, how can we make it better, right? So you can see that, they deployed the in-house account reconciliation system using Python. So I actually used this language with 90% accuracy, which was previously 45%. You can see that, the numbers actually and the metrics actually really help to show your impact. And another thing I would really recommend is, utilize bold and italics to help your metrics pop. You notice like from let me just go back one slide, but from this to this, you see a big difference. I just had to bold it, and there was that pop already, right? So really metrics and just using metrics and including a comparison of what was before, like it was 45% before, and then now it's 90%. Just use that to kind of demonstrate on what kind of improvement you help to bring, right? Okay. Next bit on projects. Again, it's important to focus on your impact. So there is this there's this formula we all follow, actually. I think most Googlers follow, even I follow it personally. So basically you accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. I will show you later in another slide how we do this, but that is a very, very good way to measure your impact. Okay. And the next thing is also a little bit more on like, what kind of projects do you do? Is it a personal project? Is it something for school? It'll be really interesting to know, right? And the last bit is as well, be sure to include what kind of technical skills you know, which I already mentioned above. So, right. Examples, right? Again. So yeah, you can just show which course you went for, and what kind of project you did, when you did it, what kind of languages you use. And notice again, I use bold here, and you see how it just pops, right? So I think the example above is a school project, the one below is a personal project. So it shows especially things like, I had like 300 downloads with a rating of 4.08. That just shows, you know, what kind of impact you brought, instead of, yes, I just developed this thing and then people used it, you know. So really, really think about what kind of impact you want to show to your recruiters. Okay, next. So I think when you join Google, you have a lot of amazing opportunities to build and use technologies and tools to impact people's lives, right? But outside of your core role, you also have the opportunity to engage in a lot of our extracurricular activities. So we have like Google resource groups, special interest groups, Google-wide events, community events, and so on. But Google, to me, well, when I go to work, it's kind of like, to me, it's really like international school. But you're really encouraged to make an impact within and outside of Google as well. So if you're curious to know, like, so I think as recruiters are also very curious to know how you spend your time outside of classroom, right? So, you know, are you part of any computer science clubs or societies? You know, are you part of any technical chapters like the ACM, or do you do a lot of like coding competitions? Do you participate there? Like, do you do any internships, or do you have any teaching opportunities that you know, do you teach people how to code? And like, yeah, do you build your technical skills through open source projects like Google Summer of Code? So we want to know what excites you. So yeah, you can definitely throw in a little bit on, like, you know, what do you kind of do outside of work? Like for me, yes, I'm a Googler, right? But I'm also a YouTuber. So it's interesting things like that you know, make the recruiters like, okay, this person is like really, really interesting. I want to know more. Okay, and of course, bringing this together with another example. So you can see this person. Sorry, I think I didn't. Yes, I did not bold this, but you get the idea. Anything with numbers, just bold it. So straight away we can see that, right? But yeah, they were taking care of the data analytics community. So that demonstrates like some sort of leadership, right? And then there's a part on like problem solving, you know, thinking how to grow the club. And then of course, it show like, it mentions, right, like the number of students impacted by this. And they also mention like which language they use for the most for debugging, which is Java. And the leadership of like 55 TAs as the head TA, impacting 500 students. So you can see the amount of impact this brings. So metrics are very, very important. So yes, take note of this example. It's a really good one. Okay, next, honors and awards, right? So as you come along, you know, with your career, you may come across opportunities to be recognized for your work, or, you know, share your work with others. So we want to know, like, you know, how did you receive your additional recognition for your achievements? So it just could be like academic awards, like what was the criteria, how many recipients was it awarded to, do you do any speaking engagements, what do you talk about, who invited you to speak, public and presentations and publications, like what was your topic about, who was the audience, how big was the audience, and things like include selectivity if available. Like, it helps us understand the magnitude of these opportunities whenever there's metrics. So again, back to metrics. And of course, another example. So as whatever I just spoke to, right? So like this person was like a winner or second place winners, use Java. They won second place among 250 projects, right? And then the next one is, you know, 1 out of 3 gold medalists among 500 people. So you see how that comparison really helps. Yeah, so very, very important to take note of this. All right, so last slide here, and I think I've spoken a lot. Let me take a sip of water. Okay, cool. Right, so what is your impact, right, really? I think you can actually Google this, accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. Laszlo Bock, right, who used to be the people operations vice president. He's moved on, right? But he wrote a very, very good article on this. I think if you Google like the perfect LinkedIn resume, or my personal formula for a resume by Laszlo Bock, go and check it out. It really explains this theory very clearly. Or you can check out my YouTube video. I also did one on that. Okay, shameless plug. But really, really, this is how I write my own resume as well. And after this, it has really helped me really be very intentional about how I write my own CV. So really check it out. And just I think last notes, right? Just remember that the purpose of your resume is just to get your foot into the interviewing door with the recruiter. So as tempted as we are to put all our projects and our achievements down, remember to be very intentional about curating and highlighting your achievements. Make sure it doesn't sound like a job description. As you we shared so many examples just now, and it just shows how much metrics plays a part of it. Things like bolding and highlighting, small things, but it really makes it pop. And yeah, so again, I use this guideline personally. And once you sit down and start to write your CV, it will take some time to complete. And I personally write everything out and then I condense. And as I mentioned just now, I will look at job descriptions to see, like, for whatever I'm applying for, what are like some of the transferable skills, or what are some of the projects, right, that I can highlight to show, like, hey, because I did this project, I have this experience to actually do this other project that you are trying to do. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it. Shad, I think that's the last of my slides. Do we want to do questions now, or do you want to do questions later?
Cool. Yeah, I think we're getting some questions, and I guess we can answer specific on the resume building section. Are you okay with that, Jamie?
Yeah, sure. Maybe, I mean, we can bring Joss on also, because Joss also has some experience, a lot of experience on this, right?
Cool. All right. So we have some questions from the audience. For example, from Francis Lim asking about, for example, on joining some competition, even if we didn't win or get into the top spots, do we still include them?
Yeah, I think you can still include that, no problem. Like, even if it's just like participation, I think it shows the intent that you actually take initiative to look out for opportunities. So definitely put it in the resume, even if you don't like secure the top spot for, for whatever reason. So highly encourage you to do that.
Cool. All right. Another one from Royston. He's asking reality, especially in Singapore, employers are hyper pragmatic and hyper choosy. How are resume able to attract them? Some will said they are not keen on what we learn.
Yeah, when it comes to attractive resume, I feel like, just the whole format of the resume, like all the tips that Jamie shared, is actually the first thing that will catch our eye, just in terms of the format of your resume. Sometimes you'll be surprised like how like just a tidy, neat looking resume can really help you like just be shortlisted, at least for the first, like a first tier of screening. So that's just my tip. Like, Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Formatting is very important. I think more often than not, we get some really, and unfortunately, sometimes we get resumes which are out of format, right? So actually, one other tip that we can share is PDF your resume, because then it comes in as a PDF and it doesn't like the format just doesn't get messed up. Sometimes, like, if I'm on Mac, right, and then you send over a document from like Microsoft or something, sometimes it just gets messy. And this is not only for Google, right? This is across any recruiting firm. They all have their own in-house recruiting software and whatnot. So yeah, really just PDF your resume, and that will really help with formatting. But yeah, format in general, font size, grammatical errors, things like that really help. At least at first glance.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we have this question, but I do think it was answered earlier, though.
Well, it is a very, it's always hard, really. I tried it I've never, when I started, I never was able to get it to one page until I worked with my mentor to trim it down to one page. So it's a very good, I think, summary exercise of what you can do. Like I said, we are always very excited to write down every single thing that we do. But again, highlight and choose the projects that really show the biggest impact, that you and that kind of relates to the job that you're thinking about, because not every single thing will relate to every single thing about this job. So yeah, be very intentional about what you choose, and again, really use metrics and use that formula that we shared.
Yeah. Jocelyn, do you want to add something to this?
No, I was just gonna echo what Jamie mentioned. It's really about finding which are the ones that is more impactful to include on the resume. So those that are like, not that impactful, like maybe you can just consider like removing it. So it's a lot of like reflecting and thinking about what role you're applying for and whether this particular experience that you're putting on your resume is gonna help you get that role. So a lot of customization actually.
Cool. We have another one from Gianna. What is the best way to present our speaking engagement? Is there a recommended format?
I think we shared the example just now. Maybe I can go back. Oh, but I thought you're not presenting anymore. Hang on, let me see.
Sure.
Let's see. Or did we not have an example on there? Oh, here we go. I think we didn't mention it. I think you can just, really share again, like, what were you speaking about? Who were you speaking? Like, who was the audience? How many people were there? And then just like the topic of it, right? It doesn't have to be like super long. You don't have to, or sometimes you can even put in feedback that comes in, right? Like 90% of people felt like this was a great learning opportunity, something along those lines. If you get feedback like that, it'll be really, really good as well. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm trying to look at some of the questions. Probably this one would be a quick one. How can we present the online courses that we completed?
I feel like there's really no one fixed format per se. So long as the key information is there on the resume, if you feel that it's going to be very relevant for the role that you're applying for, then feel free to add on. But otherwise, like, I've seen resumes where students literally list down all the modules that they are taking. That is not a must, I would say, unless you feel like it's really relevant to the particular role that you're applying for. But otherwise, bottom line is just try to keep things like short and sweet and impactful. These are the things that you want to highlight on your resume. So whichever format you would like to present it in, I don't think we'll be picky about that.
Yeah, that's right. I think the more it's relevant towards the role, it's more important. So I think we can have another last one, then we proceed to another session. But later on, we'll have another set of question anyway. So it's from Daniel, who asking, what do you think is one thing students or fresh grads are not doing enough of in their resume or in general when they apply for opportunities? Great question.
In my opinion, I think these are not something new. Like these are things that we have talked about before as well. In my opinion, it's really about highlighting their achievements. Like maybe because as a student, it's gonna probably be your first few times writing a resume, so you tend to like just list things down as it is, which is not wrong. But if you really want to stand out, then you should focus on what kind of achievement that you have accomplished in that particular role that you had, for example. So that will really help. That's in my opinion what I see is lacking in students' resumes at times.
Yeah, I think really echoing Joss on that. I think I mentioned also just now, right? Sometimes when I look at the job description, when I look at the resume, I put it next to a job description, it looks the same. So you don't ever want that. You want the recruiter to know like, what role did I play in this project, and like really like what is the impact. And I think one other thing also, right, in general, not only on the resume, is a little bit of networking, I think helps. I think now LinkedIn is quite a good platform, right? You connect with a lot of different professionals, you learn from a lot of different people. So really learning how to network properly. For example, like I have so many requests for LinkedIn, but I do not say yes to every one of them because everyone just wants to add me. Why? They want to get into Google, right? But number one, like that's not the way to network. Think about it like what kind of value can you provide to that person, right? If you imagine you were in our shoes or you were in any other different recruiter shoes, what makes you stand out when you are asking for something, right? So food for thought.
Awesome. I like that. Yeah, I think it's a good practice whenever you're trying to connect with someone. You should really state the intent of why you're connecting and what's the value that, that connection you can, both have. Cool. I like that. Anyway, I guess we can answer some of the questions. We're seeing several questions still on the live chat here, but surely we can proceed to the next session with Jocelyn and CG. So I'll see you later, Jamie, and probably me as well, and then let's pull in CG on the stage. All right, cool.
All right, thank you. So thanks, Jamie, so much for, like sharing all the amazing tips on how we can write better resumes, even for myself. So hi again, everyone. So I'm Jocelyn, and as Shad mentioned, so I've been recruiting in the student space for the last 45 years. So I'm really excited to be here today along with Shijie to kind of like share some tips on how to prepare for technical interviews. So before we start, I just have a few like true or false questions as well that I'd like to like just bounce off you guys. So let's see how you fare. So the first question, true or false? You can ace an interview after a couple of weeks of studying. True, false? I think sometimes it's quite subjective. Like there are just some talented students who can clear it actually. Cool. Let's just give you guys 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So the answer is, I would say false, but then again, of course, we do have people who are able to ace their interviews just with a couple of weeks of studying. But I would say like preparing for an interview, especially like a technical coding interview, is a consistent effort that can sometimes take up to like months, right? So consistency is key. So we advise you to like, just start practicing questions on coding sites, or even like just do mock interviews with your peers to start practicing. There's no harm in doing that, and there's just no shortcut. So if you're serious about joining like a big tech company, like not just Google, like just start practicing today. All right. Next question. So all coding interviews, are they conducted on a whiteboard? Pretty straightforward. True or false? 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the answer is false, especially, right now in this climate, right, that we are going virtual. So almost all interviews are conducted via like Google Meet, like GDSC. So you'll be coding via what we call like a virtual interview platform where both you and your interviewer will have access to it. So we used to rely on Google Doc, but we have recently moved away from that and onto this virtual interview platform. All right, next question. So you have to be a competitive programmer to succeed in interviews. True or false? True, false? Anyone else? 3, 2, 1. Yes. So the answer is it's false. So having like competitive programming experience, they are, I would say, like good to have. But even if you don't have these experiences, that's fine. You can still succeed in interviews, and we have definitely seen a lot of such cases. Okay, I have just last 2 questions. Next question. So as long as you can get the right answer fast, you'll get a high score and pass the interview. True or false? True. Anyone else? Countdown. 3, 2, 1. So the answer is false. So during the interview, we look for more than just the right answer. So although efficacy is definitely something we do take into consideration as well, but it's not the key decision factor. So this is why you're here. So you get to learn more about what we look out for, in an interview at the later part of this session. All right, and on to our last question. The technical phone screen is easier than on-site interviews or GVC interviews. True or false? Any takers? False. False. Okay, just count down 3, 2, 1. So actually the answer is true. So like generally speaking, like phone interview is kind of like the first tier of screening. So it can be relatively easier compared to like on-site or GVC interview. So having said that, so clearing phone screen or interview is great, but that would also mean that you must be even more prepared for the subsequent on-site or GVC interviews if you are shortlisted. All right. So that's the end of the quiz time. So on to today's main agenda. So these are what we are going to talk about mainly. So what is the interview process looking like? How do you prepare? Some common mistakes, kind of like just share some tips with you as well, and where to find additional resources. So first up, we can talk about what exactly do we look for in a candidate? So there are actually 4 main areas. So first, we are very invested in understanding how a candidate thinks. So we want to know like how you go about solving difficult problems in real life situations, right? And next, we are definitely looking for role-related knowledge. So this would mean like coding ability and technical skills. So we want to ensure that candidates have the skills to set them up for success at Google. So like if you're applying for, say, software engineering role, then you will be evaluated on your coding ability. And similarly, if you're just applying for, say, like a business role, then you'll be evaluated based on the other aspects, such as like project management ability or your ability to understand Google's business operations, for example. All right. The third area we look at is actually leadership. So we are not really referring to just formal leadership titles. It could really mean that, you know, do you actually step up to lead when a situation actually calls for it? So we look for ways where you as a student have made impact on campus, in your classroom, or even outside of school. Like Jamie mentioned, we are really interested to find out what do you do like outside of school time. And last but not least, we look at googliness, or you can also refer to this as like a cultural fit, right? So you may have heard of this term before, and there's really no one fixed like definition for this term googliness. It could just mean like you are doing the right thing under all kinds of circumstances, or putting users first, or even respecting users, respecting your teammates, or how you actually lift yourself or lift others up. So my advice is, you know, when it comes to leadership and googliness interview, like just always be yourself. All right. So right now on the next slide is really more about the interview process. So this will be the process for full-time roles in general. So first, of course, you put in an application, there's going to be resume review, and then you will complete like a Google online challenge as well, what we call like an online assessment. So if you're shortlisted, you'll be looking to take at least around like 1 to 2 technical phone interview before you get invited for up to 5 rounds of on-site or GVC interviews. So out of these 5 rounds, 4 rounds is going to be technical or coding focused, and 1 round is going to be focused on googliness and leadership. All right, so once you clear these interviews, we will have like a group of independent senior leaders within the org to review your packet holistically. So by packet, we meant like everything from your resume to your transcript, to your interview, feedback, etc. And once you clear the review, this is where we are able to extend an offer to you. So the entire process can actually take up to like a good 4 to 8 weeks at times. All right. And moving on to take a look at how an internship process looks like. So for internship, the process begins just as how it does for full-time role, except that instead of coming for 5 rounds of interviews after the phone screen, you typically just attend like two to three rounds of like interviews, and you'll be given an opportunity to speak with specific teams to find a project match based on mutual interests. And then your packet again will be submitted to the hiring committee for review, and subsequently we'll be able to extend an offer to you if you clear the review as well. So the timeline wise, relatively shorter. It could be up to 3 to 4 weeks, or even like maybe maximum 6 weeks. All right. So that's how the process will look like. And just in terms of interview format, pretty straightforward. So usually the duration for an interview is about 45 minutes. So 5 minutes of just a casual introduction, followed by 35 minutes technical assessment, and then with just like 5 minutes towards the end for any closing questions that you may have. Okay, so when it comes to interview assessment, so you could be asked to solve a problem in any way that you choose, and then the interviewer, they could add like further constraints or wrinkles to the problem that you're trying to solve. So the interviewer is really looking for like, sharp approaches to problems, your language, syntax and programming skills, even your ability to write like quick codes to solve immediate problems, as well as your ability to use your analytical skills to explain your answer with like a well-supported reasoning. So what you will not see will be like brain teaser questions. So that's no longer a thing at Google. All right. And to kind of help you catch a glimpse into how an actual Google interview is like, of course, we have Shijie here. I'll be inviting Shijie to carry out a mock interview. So just observe the way he asks questions and approach the question itself during the mock interview. And after which he'll be sharing with you some of his top tips on how you can prepare for an interview with Google. And just for the sake of this mock interview, I will be the interviewer and Shijie will be the interviewee. So he'll be doing some live coding over here. All right, so let me know when you're ready, Shijie.
Hey, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right.
So are you ready with your coding screen up? Let's see.
I hope I'm ready. Yeah. All right.
All
I
right.
can go with the question.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask the question now. So in Google, we are often required to process like a large amount of text data, right? So given a string as an input, how would you find the most common character in the string?
The most common character you say. That means the character that occurs the most frequently in the string, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Give me a while to think about this. Imagine that around like 2-3 minutes has passed. All right. So here's what I'm thinking. Before that, I want to clarify some questions, right? So may I know how long should I expect this string to be?
Why would that matter?
So depending on the length of the string, I might choose a different algorithm. So if it is a string that is quite short, what I would do is I'm going to iterate over all the characters in the string. For every character, I'm going to find out what is the frequency of the character in that string. So for example, if let's say I have a string like banana, right? Banana, the most common character in banana is A. So I'm going to look at B. I'm going to count how many times B occur in this string, and I see only one B. And then I'll look at the second character, which is A. I'll count how many times A occur in this string, which is 3, and so on and so forth. And then eventually I'll realize that A has the highest frequency, which is 3. Now, this solution takes quadratic time in terms of the length of the string, but it has the advantage that it only requires a constant amount of additional memory. So if memory is heavily constrained, then I will prefer this solution, even though it could potentially run quite slowly for a very long string. But if I'm given a very long string, I will use a slightly more efficient approach. I'm going to initiate an array with 128 entries in it, each representing the frequency of the character indexed by its ASCII code. All right, so let's say banana, let's say everything is uppercase. B has an ASCII code of 66. So as I iterate over all the characters, right, when I see B, I'll increment the entry at 66. When I see A, I'll increment the entry at 65 and so on. And at the end of the algorithm, I'm just going to scan through this frequency array to find out what is the character with the highest frequency. All right, so this would be fast. This would be O of n, linear in terms of the length of the string, but it does take additional memory in the form of the frequency array. So
Sure. So
yeah, actually,
yeah, we can assume that the string can be quite long.
Okay, and actually, as I think about this, I would also like to clarify how should we expect this string to be encoded?
Let's assume that the string is in Unicode.
Okay, because previously I made the assumption that we are using ASCII, so that's not really a valid assumption. If it's a Unicode, then perhaps you can expect the string to have like emojis or Chinese characters or Korean characters and so on, right? So if that's the case, instead of using an array with 128 entries, I would consider using a hash table. The key of the hash table would be the character, while the value will be an integer that represents the frequency of the character. So as I iterate over all the characters in the string, I'll create a new key value pair if it is not present. And if it's present, I'll simply increment the value. And at the end of the algorithm, I can just iterate over the entire hash table to find out what is the character with the highest frequency.
Okay, yeah, I like this solution. So maybe you could start coding and we can get along.
Okay, so I will present my screen over here.
Sure.
And let's code this in Java. All right. So let's start by giving this method a meaningful name. Let's call it most common character. And we'll have a string as an input, right? Okay, so as I mentioned just now, I want to have a hash table that represents the frequency. So I will have a hash map, which is a hash table in Java that takes in the character and integer key value pair. All right, and I'll call this frequencies. Hash Java is quite verbose. All right. I'm also thinking of having a few more variables to help me with. So I'm going to get the most common character frequency, or most common character frequency. Let's just call it something like this. Equals to 0, and then maybe I'll have another character that represents the most common character right now. Okay, this will help me because if I maintain these two variables, I don't have to iterate over the entire hash table to find out what is the most common character at the end of the algorithm. So as I mentioned just now, I want to iterate over all the characters inside the string. Okay. Right. So what's gonna happen is actually not too sure if I can do this. Something like this. Int I equals to 0. A smaller string dot length I plus plus. All right. So first I'll get the character at the particular position. So character equals to string dot char at I. Right. So if my frequency table already contains the character, I'll increment. If it doesn't contain, then I'll try to create a new entry. Right. So I'll have frequencies dot get c equals to now. Or rather, I can do something like this. Count. Okay, and then count plus plus, and then I'm going to simply put this key value pair c and count. Okay, and then at the end of the day, I want to return the most common character. But before that, right, if the current count is greater than the most common character frequency, I'm going to set most common character frequency equals count. Okay, let me run through the code a little bit. If it's like a banana, then the first character is B. Frequency is going to be now. Okay, so I'm going to set count equals to 1. So, oh, okay, I'm missing something over here. Oh, okay, it's fine. Plus, okay. A. Oh, I forgot about something. I forgot to put most common character equals to C. Okay. Count equals to 0, and then if I see A, C. Okay, plus plus, and then put it inside. It seems to be okay. Yeah, I'm quite happy with this solution as it is. But I do want to clarify some boundary conditions for this problem.
Sure.
So what should we do that we receive is or what if it is an empty string?
What would you prefer?
I think it would be logical for us to throw an exception. Shall I do that?
Yeah, okay, then let's throw an exception.
Okay, so if the string equals to null, or if the length is equals to 0, And I'll do something like throw new illegal argument exception. String cannot be empty. Okay. Another question that I have is, let's say I have a string where there are two characters which have the highest frequency, like for example, AB. Can I just return any of these?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, then in that case, my solution should already be correct.
Okay, sure.
Hmm.
Then in this case, what are some other test cases that you will use if you are writing tests for this method?
Let's see. So if I'm writing unit tests, I would try boundary conditions, like when the string is null or when the string is an empty string. I'm going to try strings which are encoded not just in ASCII, but perhaps I will try emojis or characters from different languages to see if I'm counting correctly. I'm also going to try strings which are very long to kind of stress test it so that it's under reasonable memory. What else am I going to try? I'm going to try strings with multiple characters which have the same frequency, like AB. And yeah, I'll just try a lot of different examples and see that. And yeah, whenever we make modifications to the code, we want to make sure that all these tests pass as well.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, that seems sufficient. So right now, let us just consider a multi-threaded scenario. So like, how would you speed up the algorithm if you are given a multi-core processor?
Caught me a little bit by surprise. Let me think a little bit about this.
Sure.
Okay. Right. Okay, imagine around 2-3 minutes has passed. So if I have a multi-core processor, let's say I have a K core and I'm running K different threads on these cores. A logical thing to do is simply divide the string up into K equal parts and then try to have each of the thread process on each of the parts. So one idea I have is to put this frequency table in a shared memory. And then we have every thread trying to count the frequency in its respective substring and update this hash table on the shared memory. But this may not be very efficient, right? Especially if we lock the entire hash table every time we have a thread that tries to access it, because ultimately this is no faster than a solution where we only have one thread. The alternative that I can think of is for every different processor or every different thread to maintain its own hash table, right? They count the frequency for each of the substring. And once all the hash tables are generated, we try to merge all this hash table in a tournament fashion. If we expect the string to be like, say, English strings or strings from a small character set, then this can be done very, very quickly because the merging step is bounded by the number of unique characters. And if it is just English characters, well, it's 26 or 52 if you include like uppercase and lowercase. And that's not a lot. So the merging time will be quite insignificant when the string is very, very long. Ultimately, we should expect a saving of a factor of K. Because once we have merged all the tables, then we can simply run through the table once again to find out what's the character with the highest frequency. If the table size is small, then the only limiting factor is the length of the string divided by K.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, what will you change if the string comes in a stream?
If it is in a stream, like let's say in an online fashion, I don't think we need to change much because we can simply maintain the hash table inside the memory. Every time there's a new character, we simply update the hash table. And then whenever we have a character that has a higher frequency, then we simply return the character with the highest frequency. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. And I've come to the end of my interview. So thank you so much for your time, Shijie, and we'll inform you of the hiring decision in due time.
Okay. Hope to hear from you all soon. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Shijie. Yes, so that's the end of the mock interview. And right now I'll hand it over to Shijie to walk you guys through some of the tips that he has used during the mock interview itself. Over to you.
All right. Should I get the slides again? Okay. Right. I hope you all picked up some of the tips that we applied during the interview itself. Right. So this was the question again. We go to the next slide. So it's very important for candidates to ask clarifying questions when they are given the interview problems. a lot of the interview problems are given in a very ambiguous or vague fashion, and it is the candidate's responsibility to try to ask as many clarifying questions as possible to get the full requirement of the question. Right, this is to simulate real life conditions where whenever we have a requirement that we want to implement, a lot of times it comes in very vague terms, and we have to ask the right question to know what we eventually want to implement. Right, so common clarifying questions could be questions like what is the upper bound and lower bound of each of the variable, especially if the variables are numbers. Right, how often will each of the operations be called? In cases where you are supposed to implement a data structure with multiple methods, perhaps one of the methods should be called more frequently than the others. So we might want to focus on the runtime of one method over the other. Okay. Are we expecting positive numbers, negative numbers, or floating numbers? This could change the kind of algorithm that we use. And sometimes we would also like you to optimize on the memory usage instead of just the time complexity. So do clarify how much space we are allowed for that problem. There are also problems that don't give you any additional space at all. You're supposed to do any changes that you want in place on the input that's given, perhaps with just a constant addition. So that's one tip. The next tip, right, would be to always discuss algorithmic complexity. So once you have proposed a solution, it would be nice if you are able to voluntarily analyze the complexity of your solution. Tell the interviewer whether it's like a linear solution, quadratic solution, exponential solution, or so on. Okay. So most of the time, we focus on time complexity, but for specific questions, we would also like to know the space complexity of your solution. Okay. If you are able to tell us whether your solution is actually an amortized time complexity or whether it is an average case, worst case kind of runtime, that would be very impressive as well, right? Very classical examples, of course, would be something like a randomized quicksort. Okay. When you are doing the interview, we highly recommend you to think out loud, right? Always voice out your thoughts when you are thinking or when you are coding. This is kind of important because interviewers are often informed to help the candidate when they are stuck. So if you are able to think out loud, we'll be able to guide you through the problem. We are able to give you appropriate hints to steer you towards the right solution. Okay. Of course, always interact with the interviewer. The interviewers, I mean, in some sense, is trying to help you to get the correct solution. So always interact and get all the correct conditions from the interviewer. Ask for permission before you start coding, because sometimes the interviewer wants you to optimize the solution further. And sometimes if the interviewer wants you to focus on the algorithm itself, sometimes you can also ask the interviewer to see if you can have a more simplified API, because sometimes in Java, I do understand that some of the APIs is kind of verbose, which can distract people from the actual problem solving itself. Okay, next. Always test your code, all right? So once you have finished coding, it's always nice to spend around 30 seconds to a minute or even more to look through your code, check line by line, and see if you have made any careless mistakes, right? It's always better to spot the mistakes before the interviewer spot it for you. I recommend you to check for boundary conditions once you have completed the code as well. Always check for cases like, for example, perhaps you have received a null input, receive an input with a 0 length, or perhaps input that's supposed to be positive, but perhaps can accept a negative number as well. So we always want to have gut conditions against all these kind of boundary cases. Okay. Interviewer will often ask you to propose test cases for what you have just implemented. So come up with test cases that would have the highest code coverage, which makes sure that all of the lines in the code that you just implement are tested. All right, this is especially important if you have a lot of like if-else conditions or for loop that may not execute. Right, so we want to make sure that the solution is always correct, whatever branch we go into. Okay, and yeah, come up with test cases that test for boundary conditions, and you might also come up with test cases that stress test the code and make sure that it runs within the conditions that you expect in real life. All right, so I've given quite a number of interviews, and whenever people ask for tips, right, they always ask me questions like what are some of the topics that can come out and how to prepare for them. So here are a list of topics which may come out in interview. This is a non-exhaustive list. People may come out with questions which are beyond here. But of course, the more common kind of questions that we have seen would be topics that come from this list over here, like binary search, graph algorithms like breadth first search, depth first search, or flood field. We also have tree algorithms, especially like pre-order traversal, post-order traversal, in-order traversals. Hash tables are quite popular. Hash table was used in the mock interview that we just went through just now. And also, we also have other kinds of classical data structures like linked lists, stacks, queues, techniques, which are very common, like two-pointer techniques or sliding window techniques. We also want to test you on priority queues. Usually priority queues are implemented using binary heaps. And also another very, very popular topic would be dynamic programming. Right? Dynamic programming is simply, you can think of it as recursion with an additional memorization table, or you can also think of it as a more kind of like a bottom-up DP where you try to build known small base cases all the way up to the solution. Right? We can accept both styles of like top-down or bottom-up DP. Some other algorithms or data structures which could be useful could be something like union find. And of course, these are non-exhaustive. So there are a lot of like ad hoc or string manipulation kind of questions that doesn't really fall into any of these buckets, but would be very, very useful to practice on, right? So these are all the kind of topics that we are more likely to ask. Of course, knowing some other data structures or algorithms will also help you in solving some of the problems that we have proposed. Interview preparation, to me, it should be a consistent effort, right? You don't know when opportunities will arise. Sometimes you for an interview in like a few weeks of notice, right? So it should be a consistent effort. But of course, if you have very limited time, I would say a very good guideline would be like give yourself around like 4 to 8 weeks to prepare. Keep solving problems, right? Revising your lecture notes from universities, these are all very helpful to build your theoretical foundation. But more importantly is for you to just solve as many problems as you can. Okay, try to solve problems from resources like LeetCode, HackerRank, Interviewee, and so on and so forth. There are basically a lot of websites out there to prepare people for interviews already. In fact, interview preparation is practically an industry already. So make sure you can make use of all these resources to prepare yourself. Right. The most important thing is for you to schedule mock interviews with peers or perhaps people who are already working in tech firms. People have already gone through the process. It's very important to schedule mock interview to simulate the real life condition of an interview. It's very different coding on an online judge like LeetCode versus coding in front of another person, because when you're coding in front of a more authoritative figure, you feel a different kind of like stress or nervousness. Okay. It is also very important for you to compare each other's answer and try to see if there are avenues for you to improve your code, right? So even though your code may be correct, it may not be the cleanest way for you to implement the algorithm, right? So it is only through comparing your answer that you finally know whether there are some tricks or some ways that you can organize your code, right? So for example, the example I presented here is depth first search or breadth first search. Depth first search over a grid, right? You can copy the code 4 times to traverse into 4 different directions, but a better way, for example, would be just to iterate over 4 directional vectors so that you don't have to copy our code 4 times. Next. A very popular question that people also ask me is like what programming language they should choose for the interview itself. For this, I would say choose the language that you have done most data structure and algorithm practice on. But if if all things considered equal, if there are multiple languages that you can choose from, Java, C++, Python, these are languages which will do quite fine for data structures and algorithms. I myself, I like to use Python because Python is very, very short and simple, right? A code that takes Java around like 20 to 30 lines, sometimes you can do it in 10 lines in Python. But anyway, whatever language that you choose, you should know the language very, very well, all right? You need to know what are some of the properties of the language and some of the quirks of the language. Like for example, in Java, Java is a language that a lot of students are very familiar with because they are taught in universities. A lot of big companies still use Java as well. The only downside of using Java for interviews is that it is kind of verbose, right? You do need to know a bunch of in properties of Java. Like for example, strings are immutable in Java, and string append is usually O of n. You need to familiarize with yourself with a bunch of constructs in Java, like iterators, comparators, and other interfaces, which could be useful. You should familiarize yourself with generics. And of course, exceptions handling would be very, very useful because we will usually test you on catching all the boundary conditions in the code. C++ is also another language that you can use. C++ is a lot less verbose, but sometimes you might need to understand some of the programming language concepts like malloc or auto pointers. Right? For C++, do pass the values by references or pointers. Definitely, we don't want you to try to pass the values in a function by the value itself, because that would be very expensive. Familiarize yourself with C++ standard libraries, things like unordered map, stacks, queues, etc. They are very, very useful. Okay, and also familiarize yourself with class and struct syntax. This is actually quite important because a lot of times when we try to solve problems, we just implement a script or a method, but we haven't exposed ourselves to proper object-oriented programming using the programming language of choice. In interview itself, we often will ask you to implement an entire class with the API that we specify. So you need to make sure that you know how to define proper classes using the programming language that you choose. And as I mentioned just now, exception handling, that's quite important. Next. For Python, you would want to learn the useful library and functions, right? So for things like competitive programming or for even interview itself, some of the libraries like default dictionary, bisect, dequeue, enumerate, all these methods, they are very, very useful. So make sure you try to go through some of the standard libraries of Python and familiarize yourself with solving problems using them. As I mentioned just now, a lot of people, they use Python just for problem solving or writing scripts. They are using Python to do object-oriented programming, right? So if you want to use Python for interviews, make sure you know how to define proper classes using the language as well. Yeah, and as I've mentioned this twice or thrice already, exception handling is very important. So make sure you know how to do that. And even if you choose other languages, things like JavaScript or Go, Kotlin, Objective-C, Swift, TypeScript, etc. Yeah, we depending on the company, a lot of companies do accept all these languages as well. Especially for a company as large as Google, we almost always have engineers who are able to interview you in all these programming languages. And the most important thing is for you to know the language well, know how to do exception handling, know how to do proper class declarations, know the standard libraries of the language very well, and you should be okay. All right. Another thing that I want to mention is about code quality. So I would strongly prefer all the candidates to write clean and neat code. Especially for Google, we do evaluate our candidate on the code quality itself. All right. So this means that we should always have good coding practices, things like abstracting methods when necessary, try to reduce code duplication, using meaningful variable names. These are all very, very important, right? Usually it's not just the interviewer who will read your code. The interviewer will read your code, write the feedback, and the feedback may be passed to another group of people called the hiring committee, right? So the hiring committee will read your code again. So you want to make sure that your code is as readable as possible, not just to the interviewer themselves. Okay, so use proper syntax. I think I also saw one question on the live stream asking if what if we forget syntax. For more obscure syntax, I think most interviewers will be okay if, like for example, if you mix out things like length or count or size because you always switch between languages, right? This is quite common. For me, I'm okay with the candidate asking me some of the more confusing or more obscure APIs. But if you forget very, very common syntax, like how to use a for loop, how to use like iterate over something in a set and so on, right? That's not a very good signal. That would show me that you have not used the language often enough. So yeah, I myself am an interviewer who is a bit more lenient on the syntax, but if even I see someone who cannot define class properly or define a loop properly, right, it would be a very big red flag to me. Okay. So it's also quite important to know like what the interviewer is thinking when they are conducting the interview itself. So during the interview, I will look into these few points to try to evaluate how good the candidate is doing in the interview, right? I'll ask myself, how is the candidate analyzing the problem? What are some of the problem solving skills that the candidate is applying? Are they trying to iterate through all the common problem-solving techniques? Are they trying to come up with examples, try to solve the small examples to gain an intuition of it? These are actually good problem-solving skills that will give me a very good signal. Okay. Did the candidate miss any special or edge cases? So edge cases are very common in a lot of problems that we ask. When you try to propose an algorithm, yes, you may propose a very generic algorithm, but when you code it, you need to make sure that your code takes care of all the special and edge cases. Okay. As I mentioned just now, I want to know if the candidate is trying to solve the problem in a logical manner. And I also want to know if the candidate has a very strong foundation in basic computer science concepts. So when communicating with me, I want to know if the candidate is able to proactively come up with concepts or discuss concepts like, for example, a hash table or hash function. Are you able to discuss things like sorting in a very fluent way with me, right? I want you to be able to firmly grasp all these computer science concepts, be able to tell me, for example, the runtime or space complexity right after you be able to propose this. Okay, it should a lot of these concepts should already be second nature to the computer science graduate. Okay, I want candidate to be able to produce working code. Pseudocode is not good enough. I actually want something that can actually run. Most of the time, interviewers will not copy and paste your code on the compiler and to see if it compiles. But at the very least, we want you to be able to write and produce something that is almost close to production quality code. Okay, and we want you to test the code as well. Okay? Want to know if your code is clean and easy to read and maintain, as I mentioned just now. Want you to be able to explain your ideas clearly. If you cannot even tell me or explain the ideas clearly to me, then it's very hard for you to work, hard for me to work with you in real life and during working conditions. Right? And of course, we want to know if the candidates are generally nice to work with. All right. Some of the common mistakes that candidates make are as follows. So if you, jumping into the code. So if there's something to take away from my session over here, the most important thing is for you to, okay? The worst thing that you can do in an interview is not getting the correct requirements, try to solve a wrong version of the problem and waste around 15 to 20 minutes trying to solve something that the interviewer don't expect, right? So always clarify the problem. Ask the interviewer, like, if I'm given this input, do I expect this output? Okay. And I mean, if you try to solve a wrong version of the problem for around 15 minutes or 20 minutes, that's just time that you cannot recover. And yeah, that would be quite hard to recover from such an interview performance. Okay. So yeah, don't just jump into the code, always clarify the conditions first. Next would be, as I mentioned just now, always come up with examples. You come up with examples, clarify the input and output first before we actually start coding, because that will guarantee that we get the correct requirements. Okay. After you finish writing the code, as I mentioned just now, always try to go through the code one by one, line by line, and see if we have made any careless mistakes. Try to test it using some simple test cases. And if the interviewer asks for it, propose some of the unit test cases which will contribute to the highest code coverage. Okay. Next. Yeah, we do see this in a bunch of our candidates as well. We expect candidates to write real production quality code. When I look at your code, I actually undergo what I call my code review mode, right? At work, I do a lot of code review. So when I'm interviewing you, I'm also kind of doing a code review on you and trying to see like what are some of the ways that you can improve your code. Okay, so we want you to be able to write real code because, well, during work, you're actually writing real code. Okay, so you can use pseudocode to plan, to kind of briefly explain what you want to do. But at the end of the day, yeah, you want to see the actual C++, Python, Java, or any kind of program, the code implemented in the programming language of your choice. Okay, premature optimization, right? So a lot of the candidates that I've encountered shy away from proposing a brute force solution, right? But the thing is, there are a bunch of problems that I gave whereby I only expect the candidate to come up with a brute force solution, either because the brute force solution is already the most optimal solution, or perhaps the optimization can only be found after we have proposed a brute force solution, and then we incrementally add tricks that can optimize the algorithm. Okay, especially for some of the problems which, for example, could be an NP hard problem, right? There simply isn't a better way for us to improve it into a polynomial time solution, or rather, we don't know of a good way to do so, right? So you should justify like why this brute force solution is already the best that you can come up with, and once we establish that this is a good solution to implement, then we try to implement it. If we establish that there are more optimization that we can do, then we start to think about how we can improve the solution. Okay. Right. So there is also another class of interview questions that we use. This is for full-time interviews only. So in addition to technical interviews, you also have like one non-technical interview called the Goodliness and Leadership interviews. And this is for you to show your leadership skills and experience, and for you to discuss like how you have used communication and decision-making skills to mobilize your teammates. Right? This would be asking you, like, for example, examples of how you help a team succeed, or how you have solved a very difficult problems that you have faced in the past working experience or school projects. Okay, so a lot of these behavioral questions would be questions like, tell me how about a time about when you do a certain thing, or give an example of like how you have demonstrated leadership, or how you have demonstrated skills that can help your team to succeed. So we usually want to deep dive into a lot of questions. Be prepared with scenarios that you think you have done well in projects. And often in these interviews, we will ask a lot of details so that you can prove that you have the virtues or you have the qualities that we are looking for in the full-time employees themselves. Okay. And yep, that's pretty much it. All right. Jocelyn, are you back with us?
Yes, I am. I'm not sure if you want to take questions now, or shall we leave it towards the end? Maybe we can leave it towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just very quickly, I know we are about like 1.5 hours into this session already. So like just stay with me for a little while more. So what I want to do is really just to share with you guys like what are some of the opportunities and resources that we have in place to actually help you meet your career as well as your developmental goals. So first, let's talk about some of the various roles. Oh yeah, before I jump into talking about the various roles, so this is probably like the page that you will want to like bookmark. So this is where you'll be able to find like all the full-time opportunities that we have available across Google. All right, so moving on the next slide. So these are the typical roles that we have in Google Singapore. So over to the next slide, please. Right. Okay, so this will be the roles that we typically hire for. So of course, we'll have like customer engineer that will be mainly within our Google Cloud space. And then we have our data center technician as well as software engineer. So usually I would say hiring timeline wise, the roles are usually open in around like September, October. So if you're interested, like feel free to like, go onto that page to keep a lookout for all these opportunities. And these are just some of the roles that we hire in Singapore itself. So if you actually talk about like some of the roles across APAC, right? So we have different hiring timelines. So I will highly suggest again for you to like jump onto the webpage to kind of like take a look at all the other opportunities. But what I do know, like for example, right now, Taiwan, they are actively looking for software engineer as well as silicon engineer, and they are all university graduate opportunities. So if you're interested, highly like encourage you to pop over to apply for them. And over here, there are all the internship opportunities. There are 4 main ones in Singapore office. So again, it's within the cloud space. And then we have data center as well as software engineering internship. And they're all focused mainly on penultimate year students. And it's only the STEP internship, the last one that you see at the end. That is a program that is aimed to, empower underrepresented group in their second year. So if you're interested, again, like the timeline wise is going to be similar with the university graduate opportunities. So they'll open up around like September / October. Okay, so just moving on. So this is a really good resource for students, especially in my opinion. So it's the Tech Dev Guide. So within here, you'll be able to find a lot of curated resources that we actually put in place. And some of the resources are actually made by Google as well. So they can actually grow your technical skills, supplement your coursework, as well as to prepare you for interviews. So on to the next slide, I would say some of the resources here will mainly fall within these four main buckets. So there's one that's focused on foundations of programming. So this is mainly for students who are new to coding. And then we have advanced programming. So these are for students who are already like further along in the computer science undergraduate or master's program. And then we have machine learning for students who are interested in machine learning itself, or even like cloud computing. These are, I guess, for students who are passionate about cloud, or if you want to pursue a career eventually within the cloud space, then this would be something you want to complete on at your own pace. So head over to this tech dev guide. It will be super useful for you. And next, I'd like to talk a little bit about Kickstart. Has anyone heard about Kickstart before? Just a quick comment. Yes, no? Maybe not. Okay, but no worries. So what is Kickstart exactly? On to the next slide. You'll see Kickstart is actually a platform that allows coders around the world the chance to just develop and hone their programming skills through some online hosted or competition rounds. So each round is about 3 hours long, and it features kind of like a variety of coding challenges, and they're all developed by Google engineers, right? So this actually gives you a taste of the technical skills that is needed for a career at Google, all right? So, and even if you happen to be like one of the top competitors in our Kickstart rounds, you can even like, there's a chance for you to be invited to be interviewed at Google. So we have different rounds that's held across throughout the year at different timings so that they are easily accessible to coders everywhere. And onto the next slide, you will see that the first round for 2021, our round 8, is actually coming up on March 21st, 12 p.m. SGT. So if you're interested, pop over into this link over here and sign up for it. All right. Moving on, besides Kickstart, we actually have a lot of other amazing coding competitions that run each year, and they actually offer you like a really, really good chance to kind of like just develop your programming skills and meet other coders as well. So one of them is Hashcode. So Hashcode is an annual team programming competition that's modeled on software engineering at Google. So in Hashcode, your team will tackle kind of like a Google-inspired challenge, like optimizing the layout of a data center or programming driverless cars, for example. So if you're interested, pop in there and you can sign up. The other one will be Code Jam. So Code Jam is actually one of Google's like longest running coding competition that's famous for its puzzles. So Code Jam, again, it takes place like across multiple rounds, and you have a chance to, of course, earn the title of our Code Jam champion and to win like $15,000 at the World Finals. So registration are actually right now open. So again, if you're interested, highly encourage you to pop into this link over here to sign up for it. And also just to call out, all these competitions, they are open to developers of all skills level, whether you're year 1, year 4, high school, they're all open. All right. So next up, this is another program that might interest you, and that is our Google Summer of Code. So this is a global program that focuses on introducing students to open source software development. So as part of this program, you will be paired with like a mentor from a participating organization to kind of gain exposure to real world software development and techniques, right? But on top of that, you will actually be earning like a stipend as well, right? So it's actually a great opportunity for you to just spend your school semester break and you get to earn a stipend while working in, you know, an area of your interest. So win-win situation. And application for this, they are opening up on 30th March. So please stay tuned if this sounds like something that you might be interested in. Okay, and last but not least, actually, we have our Generation Google Scholarship that's coming up for women in computer science. So this scholarship actually aims to inspire and support our year 1 and year 2 undergraduate students who identify as female in the fields of computing and technology. Right, so as a scholar, if you're shortlisted, you'll receive a cash award for the 2021 and 2022 academic year, and you'll get to attend like an annual scholars retreat. But of course, this year it will most likely be virtual to kind of connect with the other scholars, to network with software engineers, and even attend some of our developmental workshops that we have in place to help you grow your skills. So this scholarship is open to only certain APAC countries or regions. So make sure you pop into this link to learn more about the eligibility criteria and how you can apply if this is something that you might be interested in. So applications are actually opening up next Monday, and it will open all the way up to 29th of March. So please keep this on your radar if this might be something that you want to pursue and apply for. Okay, so over next slide, I know I've shared a lot of various like opportunities, resources, and different links. So this is really just like a page to summarize everything that I've shared. So yeah, at Google, we do have a lot of resources to help you be successful as long as, like you actually look around and just, go into all these links that we have. So leverage on our resources to help yourself grow professionally. Okay, and I think that's the end from my side. So, yep.
All right,
Shaq,
cool.
over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jocelyn. Really great insights. Really appreciate all the details that you guys have put in, especially the Mac interview earlier. I think a lot of the students were able to see like, oh, okay, that's how it's being done. It's like, it's a mind-blowing experience for everyone as well. Let me put everyone back in, Jamie and CG on the call. And probably we can just do a little bit of the question and answer from the audience today. And if you everyone who are tuning in, if you have any other questions who you want to put in, uh, you know to ask on our with our speakers, please feel free to just add it right now on the comment section. I know there's a little bit of a live delay from the audience and to us here, but we would love to to receive some of your questions right now. Okay. Uh, if you asked earlier, just feel free to just resubmit the questions as well, so we can click on that right away. Okay, we have a first one here from Joe Ping Nang. I have the experience of working with a startup company to build their full stack website. Is that more attractive to Google than experience as intern in bigger companies? Any one of you would like to answer this?
I can give you a shot. I wouldn't say whether it's more attractive or not. Like, I mean, each experience has its own like value, right? In terms of like what actually you did, the impact that you made in that particular company or in that particular role. So I wouldn't say it's one more attractive than another. But I mean, yeah, startup company experience is definitely something like we'll definitely consider you for, as one part of our, shortlisting process, definitely.
Cool. All right. Anyone else would like to add in? Probably on the programming technical skills, CG. Would you like to share a little bit on that part?
To me, it's quite equivalent. Ultimately, like we have seen people who has done well in Google coming from like an internship from a startup company or coming from internship with like big tech companies, right? It is the on-the-job kind of performance that matters more to us, right? So having either a startup kind of experience or having either a big tech kind of internship experience, as long as it's on the resume, we spot it and then we think you're good enough for interview, we send it for the interview, and then it is the interview performance that takes precedence.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Cool. All right. We can probably proceed to the next one. We have here from Sushi Summer. Are the leadership roles in other fields such as marketing can be placed in the resume if you're applying as a developer? This is an interesting question. Jamie, would you like to answer this one?
I mean, yeah, definitely. Whatever experiences, again, right, it goes back to being intentional and tailoring your resume to the job description, right? Like, will putting your leadership role in marketing help this role? If it doesn't, then no point putting it in. So I always think it's really about being really tailoring your resume. It's the same thing as a shirt. You can go to whatever shop and buy a shirt, right? If it's too big, you try to wear it, it might not look nice on you. But if you go to a tailor, right, you really like they will measure everything nicely. It fits you very, very nicely. So it's the same concept. So yeah, writing a resume may just be like I will just write down everything, but that will be a very general overview of everything, right? So yeah, be very intentional about what you want to highlight.
Like that. Be very intentional with what you highlight. That's a great point. Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Justin, do you wanna add something as well? Or cool. All right, we can probably proceed to the next one from Nitin Matthew. Can a candidate who meets all or most of your expectations possibly not make it into a team?
I think this questions requires a lot of context, right? Like when you say meet all or most of your expectation, does it mean like this candidate met all the 4 areas that we mentioned earlier, like how a candidate thinks, role-related knowledge, leadership, and Googliness? If a candidate meets all, I wouldn't see like why this person would not be shortlisted or at least be extended an offer. But I mean, there's always so many other contexts around this. So.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. Okay, cool. We can proceed to the next one. Kim Sheng Yong, how to prioritize which section to show first in a resume. Probably another question I can probably add into this. There was a question for students, they don't have a work experience. How do they do that? Like, Jamie.
Yeah, so I can. I think the first slide that we showed the basic structure, right? So you should always put your education first for students, because that is your story, right? Your student. And then below, if you don't have any work experiences, again, just put down your experiences in your different projects and like whatever you do. I'm going to plug my YouTube video here. So I have a video on project snippets. So snippets are basically like whatever you have done in your projects and whatnot, just take 2 minutes to write down what you have actually done. So you actually capture your data, your metrics, and then you can write it in your resume and you do it. You don't do it at the end where, oh my God, I'm going to apply for a job now. What did I do for the past year, right? You do it concurrently. And then when it comes to the time to writing your resume, all you do is just, okay, I did this, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then there you have it.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah. All right. Let's proceed to another question. I'm trying to look here. If you guys have other questions, are you guys looking at as well? I guess we have a question specifically for CG. Is there an AI engineer already at Google, or is software engineer still a term to those who codes even in the area of AI?
Right. So if you are looking for roles that specializes in AI, so we have software engineering roles who focus on machine. Sorry, what was I being cut off? Right. So we have software engineering roles who focus on machine learning. We also have a researcher role who focuses on machine learning. We also have like data scientist roles or who focus on machine learning. So all these different tracks would have different interview requirements. So if you are talking about software engineers who are working on like AI and machine learning, then yes, they are still considered in the software engineering ladder. We still expect them to pass similar interviews that we provide for software engineers. But in addition to that, we'll have domain-specific questions. Like if you are focusing on machine learning, then we will ask you some machine learning domain-specific questions. And this is true not just for machine learning. We also have software engineers who specialize in, for example, mobile development. We have software engineers who focuses on, like, for example, more of like research questions, research style of domains. So whichever domains that you choose, you will probably have like an additional round of interview or have an interview that replaces one of the standard coding interview that only asks for like domain-specific questions. I myself, I've conducted a bunch of iOS domain-specific questions because for whenever we hire iOS engineers, we will expect engineers to have like prior iOS working background, and we'll ask iOS specific questions that other engineers will probably not know.
Cool. Right. So basically, there are roles already. So, but that basically still comes into the fundamental of software engineering. approach. Cool. All right. Thanks, CG, for that answer. We'll have another one from Celine Natasha. What do you think about applying it for two different titles in one company? Does it make a bad impression for HR or recruiters when they're exploring multiple roles, submitting their resume?
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
can take that. So there's really no issues with you applying like more than one role, so that's perfectly fine. I guess only a conflict that might come is that if you happen to be shortlisted for both roles at the same time to be interviewed, then at some point we'll definitely have to, ask you to kind of like make a decision, like which role do you exactly want to pursue. Because we do not want to have you like interview and have like engineers invest their time interviewing you and then come to a stage where, like you have to kind of decide on an offer. So we'll probably reach out like towards at the earlier part of the process to ask you to clarify like where exactly do you want to proceed or which role do you want to proceed with. But no bad impression at all.
I can also
Awesome.
add on. I think two is okay, but if you apply for like maybe 50 in a row or maybe even like 20 in a row, right? That is a different story. I would think, like for example, if you apply for a software engineer role, and then you apply for a finance role or like it's like something else on a completely different spectrum, and in between you have all these different roles, right? It does show that you don't really know what you want, and you're just applying for every single thing. Now that is not so good. But if you are not sure, like these two job descriptions look like I could do this, I could do that, and of course they are more similarly aligned, that's okay. Like Josh said, the recruiter will probably reach out to you and explain it better to you. Yeah, just really avoid mass applying to every single thing.
I would say like if there's a soft guideline, maybe up to three is fine. Yeah, anything
Yeah.
beyond that, yeah, probably too much.
As far as I know, there's a rule at Google when applying on career site, right? Like maximum of three in each month.
It's kind of like a soft guideline, I think. I'm not sure if it's like a hard or fast rule. I don't think it is. But just a
Yeah.
soft guideline, three will be good.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for clarifying that. Quick plug, you can subscribe to Jamie Lim on
Thank
her
you.
YouTube channel. You'll learn a lot from her. I've been learning a lot from her videos as well. So yeah, cool. Next one here. May I know where do recruiters usually select resumes from? Yeah.
So usually for candidates, you guys will have to apply via our like job posting on our careers page. So that would be the main source of where we get the resumes from, if that answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah. And
LinkedIn
that's
also.
the only source.
LinkedIn also sometimes. So keep your LinkedIn like updated. Sometimes we may look out also to for if of
Yeah.
course if there's good talent out there, we'll always be on the lookout for it.
Yeah, but that would be more like passive, like if we reach out to you, right? But if you apply, then generally it will be like from one source. That would be to apply to us via our careers page.
Cool.
But
Great.
definitely keep your LinkedIn updated.
Yeah. And if you're Singaporean, my careers future or my skills future also, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Uh, okay, cool. I think this question has been answered earlier, but would you like to just recap on this, Jamie?
Yes, I think it's good to I mean, again, if it makes sense to edit in, yes, it shows like I guess the intent is like what are you trying to show, right? If you put this competition in, are you trying to show that uh you are, I mean, if it's like 10 different competitions across like 6 months, I don't know how many you want to list down. Again, remember you have that one page limit, right? So it might, or if you've taken an like a competition like 5 years ago, maybe not, but if it's ongoing, it's now, yeah, I would say go ahead, like put it in, so we will know like what you are like applying for, or what you are in competition for. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I like that. We have some couple of questions. I guess just here, does Google have domain specific openings for cybersecurity and ethical hacking students, or any specific in the cybersecurity space? Uh,
That's a great question, but I think at this stage for university graduate opportunity, we are not seeing that in the Singapore office. But actually, I'm not too certain like whether say like in other regions do they have that or not. Yeah, but the best place to find out is definitely on the career
On the
stage.
career side. Yeah. Cool. Next one here. Are there any cases of being allowed to join the Google team without being interviewed? Jocelyn?
That's a very interesting question. Like
Indeed.
definitely this person have to definitely has to be interviewed, like whether is it during the internship and then eventually getting converted, that's a different story, right? But at some point, anyone who's joining Google definitely will be interviewed.
Right. Yeah. Cool. We can take probably last one question here. When looking at technical projects done by candidates, what aspect do you value more? The scale of the project or the tech stack of the project? Or the technology used? Would you like to answer this, Jocelyn or Jamie? Or probably CG if you have anything.
Yes, it.
Mm, go ahead, Sujay.
Yeah, I want to, whenever I see resumes or whenever I recommend what to write about your resume items, I want to see tech stack of the project, definitely, because that shows me like what kind of exposure of technology that you have had, and also it's also gives validity to what you have tried to describe on the resume item as well. Scale of the project, yes, I would like to see that as well. I often ask people to quote figures like what is the impact of your work, like without you, like what would have been the difference to the team. If you are able to quote things like I've increased the runtime by X%, I've increased monetization by X%, I've increased user interaction by X%, like that would be very, very good. Okay, so we value both, and both would be very, very important for your new role in Google itself because yes, tech stack, what you have exposed to, you strongly correlate to the skills that you need in the real job in Google. And also the scale of the project would also give us a sense of like how used to you are in working with like products that will serve like millions of users every month.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Indeed. All right. Cool. Yeah. I think importance of putting that tech stack if it's a technical role. Indeed. Yeah. Important. I think last one here is just to clarify if certificates are important. When applying for jobs, like probably certificates in terms of events. I know not really events, like more on learning certificates. Probably Coursera or something like that. Those can be added.
Yes, I would say those can be added. And just to call out, for example, especially if you're interested in, say, like a career in cloud, like definitely include all the cloud certifications that you have on your resume because that's definitely going to increase your chances of being shortlisted. That's for sure.
Awesome. All right. I guess that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for all the insights, and answering the questions with our students today. I know, they probably have a lot more questions and wanted to clarify and ask more, but our time right now is almost 6 p.m. And of course, we just want to conclude the event here. But before that, I'll probably just share a little bit more on our final events and activities. I'll just remove you for a bit. All right, cool. So just a little bit of announcements. Solution Challenge is happening right now, and the submissions will be opening very very soon, which is on March 1 until March 30. So just to quickly show you a little bit about it, here's a video.
Let's check out the solution challenge.
Let's do this.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Welcome to the Google Developer Student Club's 2021 Solution Challenge. The mission of this challenge is to use Google technology to solve for one of the United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to end poverty, ensure prosperity, and protect the planet. Win cool prizes, mentorship from Google, and swag. Get help along the way from Google at training events, code labs, and hackathons. Submit your solution by March 31st, 2021. Register today. We can't wait to see what you build.
Let's get started.
All right, cool. So the goal of the Solution Challenge, which is an annual competition by the Global Developer Student Clubs, is focused on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we've been hearing a lot from different students from different parts of the globe who now have more focus on different specific topics that are recently and more aligned to the issues that they're facing in their communities. And I think having a goal, something like SDG, would really allow you to kind of think of more focused problems that you can solve using technology. So last year we have a lot of winners as well. You can check out directly on the website to learn more of what are the projects that they have built on top of solving some local community problems that they have. So there'll be three levels of prizes. So the top 50 who will be part of the mentorship program. And then after a month, they will be eliminated to top 10 finalists. And then finally, I think after a couple of weeks, the top three winners will be announced as well. So that's the process. So the judging criteria is direct focus on the impact of your project, of your solution that you're building, and at the same time the technology part that you have created as well. So this is basically the simple timeline. You register right now on the website, and from there there'll be you'll have check-ins with the entire team, and the process is basically to learn and build the projects that you are planning to do. And of course, by starting March 1 until the end of March, that's when you can submit your project. There will be a lot of hackathons happening in Southeast Asia. If you are interested, you can learn more directly on our dsc.community.dev site to find different communities hosting these hackathons. If you are interested to have more of a community involvement in developing your solution as well. So you can find more details about the solution challenge on this website. Please do log in and check it out directly. And I think earlier Jocelyn mentioned about the Google Summer of Code. Just a quick recap, Google Summer of Code is basically an online international program designed to encourage student participation in open source software development. So, with the guidance of a mentor in an open source organization. So you'll be partnered with an organization. And one of the coolest things about GSOC is that you have a stipend, when you're developing the project with that open source organization. And we focus highly on university students as well, who have who wants to really gain real world experience in developing and creating those solution as well. So if you're interested, these are some of the goals of the program. Really highly focus on creating open source software development, and bring new excited developers who stay, of course, after the program as well. There's a lot more opportunities for you. And of course, exposure to the entire software development process, from testing, version control, software licensing, and online communication, and create more open source code for everyone to use. So there are different two evaluation that student must pass, and of course you need to pass every evaluation in order for you to receive and be paid by the stipend for your work. And that means, at the end of the GSOC, students submit the code they've written for their project for everyone to see and use as well. And of course, the submission will come in on March 29, which is end of March as well, until the April 13. But you can start, looking and finding more, solutions. Information about this competition. So probably just a quick video after the this event as well. I'll share a little bit about that. And of course, if you're interested to gain a quick labs access for this event, feel free to send us your feedback about this event and how we can improve more on our next and future events on skills level up. Feel free to just give us do a quick feedback. It's a 1-minute feedback form, and right after you submit, you'll receive an automated email with the quick labs access, where you can start learning more about cloud and of course Firebase and other Google technologies available there. Cool. Just a quick shout out to our next event as well, the IWD Women in Tech Reframing Your Narrative event, which will be happening next week. This is one of the most interesting topic that we also are planning. So in support of the International Women's Day, we're hosting an entire series focused on how you can reframe your narrative and understanding your value in your university or in your in your community as well, and learn from different speakers about their experiences working in the industry, in the tech industry, and different insights that you can gain from this awesome fireside chat as well. It will be hosted by Laura, who is our Googler from Indonesia, and also Laksha, who will be sharing more about the workshop during next week's event. So please do sign up, and of course put it on your calendar for you to be able to join our next week's event as well. And of course, this is highly focused on Google Developer Student Clubs members, and of course, we want you to be involved highly with the program and within your community as well. So if you have no community yet, please find the nearest university, or probably connect with some of our DSC leads and members on this platform, dsc.community.dev, to learn more about what is Developer Student Clubs all about. Cool. And of course, thank you so much for joining Skills Level Up. We really appreciate your time and of course your Saturday, spending your Saturday with us today. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you enjoy the event today, and hope to see you on the next one. Thank you so much.
The Google Summer of Code program is about making sure both our student and the projects they work on are successful.
We do everything we can to make sure we match the right student with the right organization.
If you have an interest in open source software development and you're passionate about technology, we'd love to have you apply for Google Summer of Code.